Credit card fees are an enormous pain point for retailers. In fact, they are the second largest expense after wages and benefits. Retailers have, for more than 20 years, looked at how to address these outrageous credit card fees that continue to increase. Today, we're going to talk about where we stand on moving things forward with reform and what's next. Joining us today are two members of the NACS government relations team. We have Doug Kantor and Anna Reddy. They have been extremely active, not just the past few months when we've talked to our members about the importance of making their voices heard, but over the past few years, if not decades, in trying to fight the banks on something that they are very good at opposing. And let's just start with you, Doug. There was a lot of movement this year in how do we move things forward, a lot of changes in how this issue is seen. Can you give us an update on where we are today, which is technically June 12th, which is late in the day on Thursday?
Absolutely, Jeff. And thank you for having us on to talk about this. The credit card fees our members pay always rate as one of the most important issues that they face. It may be the biggest public policy issue that they have ever faced in this industry. And there's a number of things we've done over time. So just quickly to touch on a few, we've been in litigation against the credit card industry for 20 years now. It's still going. There's actually a trial date later this year. So a glimmer of something happening there after many, many novel-worthy trips, twists and turns along the way. We've worked with the Federal Reserve on debit card regulations, which we helped get passed in 2010. And they're looking at those regulations now. That's always a big piece of the puzzle. The Department of Justice sued Visa just last September. That case is ongoing. They're looking at debit card activity of Visa and MasterCard. So there are many pieces of the puzzle. The big one right now, and the one that our members have been most actively engaged in, is legislation in Congress. And that's the Credit Card Competition Act. And we did have a very interesting opportunity this spring that we built to throughout this year as the Senate considered legislation on stable coins, a form of cryptocurrency. And we made a push to get into the mix there, which we can talk about in more detail. But that's one of the most relevant things. I will also note, while we're doing this, the state associations in our industry have been pushing state level legislation across a wide range of subjects that would help here, including things like not allowing the fees to be charged on the tax amounts of transactions and those sorts of things. So the activity is broad here, and happy to get into any aspect of it. But I suspect the big news for a lot of our members is, hey, what's happening in Congress?
So we'll continue that with you, Doug. What is the big news happening in Congress?
So the big news is this. We see credit card legislation as being very much complementary to legislation Congress is considering on stablecoins. The stablecoins are a payment option of the future, which could be super helpful. We've always favored a number of different potential new options to open up the cards, the payment system generally. But credit cards are the payments of today, and we need help with the payments of today too. What we ran into this past week as the Senate considered that stablecoin legislation is that there's still friction between Democrats and Republicans, who knew, but where the Senate used to be a body where there were lots of amendments on the floor and policies got considered and people got opportunities at votes. That hasn't been the case for a number of years. John Thune, the new majority leader in the Senate, indicated that he would return to that type of style. And this was the first test of that. And it turns out they are not yet returning to that type of style. There were no amendments of any kind not just ours, there were more than 20 other amendments out there, but none of them got a vote. And unfortunately, we do live in an age of partisan friction that doesn't allow some of these things to happen when you expect. So the opportunity for this week has passed, but we saw a lot of good things come out of that too, as a matter of fact.
Well, Anna, want to turn it over to you with the good things. In marshaling, pardon the pun, the voice of NACS, the members of NACS, whether it was Day on the Hill, whether it was fly-ins, whether it was filling out a voter voice to make your voice be heard, while we are not part of the stablecoin act going forward, there's been a lot of progress in terms of getting our message out there. Can you talk about what you've heard in talking to elected leaders about this issue that gives you a lot of hope?
Absolutely. We have seen this enormous groundswell of support around this issue, not just from people that we would expect, but from members that even we thought, hey, they're not with us. But the more that we went in to meet with their staffs, the more they heard from our members and others in the merchant community, we've seen them shift positions towards us and with us. And I think that that shows that every contact that any of our members or anyone in our industry or any industry is willing to make to Capitol Hill, it makes a difference. We saw we have done dozens of fly-ins since this legislation was introduced 3 years ago. And some of those staffers, while staff turns over often on Capitol Hill, some are still in the office, and we've seen their mind shift from what they've heard from our members. And what's interesting, Jeff, one of my favorite anecdotes from recently is we went in to meet with a staffer and we were telling him how much, the fees went up just in January. We have new numbers from last year. And he said, I remember what they were when you first came in. They were 138 billion. You're telling me they're 187 billion now? That's a 50 billion increase. And that's when you're like, okay, the banks, they have the resources to spend lobbying this more than we'll ever have. They have our money to spend against us. But we have the people and the voices, and we outwork them every time. And so while, this wasn't our moment and opportunity, I think we are more motivated and encouraged than ever, which is saying a lot because I've been working on this for 11 years and Doug has been working on it for longer than that. But it's from, our members are jazzed. We're seeing a difference.
Mm-hmm. So you talk about the long time frame that this has taken. And there's I'm going to paraphrase it, but one of the things is the sign of a leader is somebody that does the right thing that is difficult to do. This is the right thing that's difficult to do. And certainly our industry has played a leadership role in that among all kinds of other retail verticals that have also stepped up. So great to see the entire retail industry step up. Now, Anna, I want to just also have you kind of walk through how the last couple of years, you talked about the bill was introduced or the amendment was introduced, bill was introduced. Last Congress. For those that don't live government relations every day, can you walk through like how not the animated version that we all cite, but what does it look like when something's introduced? What has to happen? Then it was reintroduced in a new Congress, and then it has to find a path forward. Can you kind of walk us through what those last 3 years looked like without taking 3 years to explain it?
Yeah, I will do my best. We have been working on this legislation, as you mentioned, for several years, but on the issue overall for almost 2 decades. And so it was probably, Doug will correct me if I'm wrong, but circa 2017, 2018, when we started really thinking through credit card reform and how do we go on the offense in terms of it. And in 2021, we started to see opportunities of, the debit routing piece has been really successful. And on credit cards, how it, looking at the politics of Congress and where they stand, we should pursue something similar, pushing for competition on credit card payments, because that is a message that when we were lobbying on debit reform, we saw resonate with both sides of the aisle really strongly. And so we started looking for legislative champions. And obviously, our longtime Democratic champion, Dick Durbin, was all in and committed, and Peter Welch from Vermont. But we were looking for new Republican champions. And that's where we started meeting with several Senate offices, but Senator Marshall's office really was interested in this. They saw how unfair it was, but how really it is this Main Street versus really the largest Wall Street mega banks, and wanted to champion that issue in 2022, which is when we first got the bill introduced. A House version was introduced as well in the House of Representatives by Lance Gooden and Zoe Lofgren. That was the end of a congressional cycle. And so a new Congress came in January 2023, and we got the bill reintroduced 2 years ago in June of 2023 with those same champions. But we were able to get, which is notable, J.D. Vance was a co-sponsor who, at that time, he was a senator and not the vice president of the United States. But we built Republican support in the Senate. And that signaled all over town, and especially to the credit card industry, you have a big problem. We're expanding the boat of support for this bill and people that are willing to put their names on it. So fast forward. So that was 2 years that we lobbied in favor for the bill, looked for opportunities, continued to build this support. And then we get to this year. And Marshall and Durbin very strategically, as Doug mentioned, saw this opportunity with the stablecoin legislation moving to make the first run at it. They are committed, looking for other opportunities as well. One thing that we have did in the past few years, which I think was noteworthy, was Doug testified before the Senate Judiciary hearing in November, where Senator Durbin was chairman of the Judiciary Committee and actually held a hearing looking at this legislation with Doug, a small bookstore owner, and then also executives from Visa and MasterCard. And that hearing was telling, because we saw members on both sides of the aisle acknowledge that, hey, we have a huge problem here that isn't fixing itself. But even a senator that isn't with us, Tom Tillis from North Carolina, looked at executives from Visa and MasterCard and said, you have to figure this out or else Congress will. And so that was a condensed version of the last 3 years.
That was very impressive. So Doug, in talking about this, I might use the improper words, but this was not the Credit Card Competition Act not being included in the Genius Act or Genius Bill was not. The decision was a procedural decision. It really had nothing to do with the merits of the Credit Card Competition Act. It was just, this is the way we're going to do lawmaking. But at the same time, we were pretty comfortable with, if that opportunity presented itself, that it would carry forward. How much are you able to talk about some of that inside baseball in where we felt this might go if this procedural opportunity were available?
Yeah, I can talk about it. So what's interesting is, you're right, it was a procedural decision. It was not divorced from the fact that there are members of Congress who would rather not have to vote on our issue.
Right. So the easy thing is for the credit card companies to say, make this a procedural decision, because then that gives them another opportunity for no.
Yeah, they were looking for a way to duck the vote, because they knew, and leading up to it, we heard from them. They knew, we knew, if there had been a Senate vote on the Credit Card Competition Act, that was going to pass. And a big part of that is exactly what Anna touched on. Our members talking to their senators over and over and over again, sending them letters, making phone calls, showing up in the office, that moved the needle where we felt very comfortable that we had the votes. Now, procedurally, we didn't get it. I am reminded of the quote that is typically attributed to Wayne Gretzky: "You do not make 100% of the shots that you do not take." So we took our shot, and it wasn't going to happen this time, but that's okay. We will have more shots to take, and we'll take them because now we have even stronger support than we did before. It did motivate our members. We hope to keep them motivated. I think keeping up the level of activity, it will be very important. But we saw that when our members see that opportunity, boy, it is a great thing to watch because they did all the things I talked about. Frankly, they even reached out to their customers and got a lot of their customers weighing in with members of Congress. That was impressive, and we will certainly be communicating with them more about what more can we do, and here's what the next steps are.
Yeah, Jeff, I can speak a little bit to that because I think it's very cool how our member companies sought to activate both their employees and their customers. So we had, part of this is driving letters to the Hill. In the last 6 weeks, this industry alone sent more than 20,000 letters to Capitol Hill. And that was it was our own call to action that people see in the NACS daily, but that's only a fragment of it. It was also member companies who were sending it out to their associates and even at the store level to, hey, send this, click here, send a note to your member of Congress on this. And then we've also partnered with Rovertown on using customer loyalty apps to activate customers. Your most loyal customers want to help, and they're the ones who are being hurt by these fees most. So we saw tremendous action taken and driven from, again, employee outreach and customer outreach.
Speaking of the employee outreach, let's talk about the NACS employee outreach. Yeah. When it was announced that we have a limited time that we might be able to make a difference, NACS staff was mobilized. Some of you may have gotten a phone call from someone at NACS just saying, hey, we'd love to see you take action on this. And everybody on staff reached out to various members so you may have made a new friend in the whole process. And that's what we saw with our members as well, whether they're coming to DC or whether they're contacting members of Congress. Doug, I never really thought of this as a Wayne Gretzky conversation, but the other big Wayne Gretzky quote is asking why he scores so many goals. He says he doesn't go where the puck is; he goes where the puck will go or is going, and it's a terrible simplification of the quote. But so where are we going with the credit card issue?
So look, we're going to get this bill passed. It's just a question of when, not if. And we've been saying that for a while now because we've seen this growing support for it over time. So look, procedurally, there are always more things you can do in Congress to block something than to get it passed. We know that. But if you've got the support, eventually you can wear things down and get across the line. And the other thing I note here that's important, the outpouring from the NACS staff and the work was amazing. We also work with a bunch of other coalition partners on this issue and have for years. And we saw them step up in ways that were very helpful and impressive. The Restaurant Association, the Grocers Association, FMI, the Retail Association, NFIB, these groups got out there, contacted their members, got their membership active. So our 20,000 letters was just one piece of the puzzle with all these other groups. And then we really expanded that coalition in interesting ways that I think most of our members would not have thought of. So for example, we've got now a coalition of consumer groups and public interest groups that are with us on this. We have a number of the major labor unions across the country that are with us on this. We have a number of the largest Native American tribes across the country all endorsed the bill. The military PX stores endorsed the bill, and their groups got involved. The National Federation for the Blind and blind merchants endorsed the bill. So there were a bunch of things that happened that were due to the fact that we created that snowball going down the hill, and it really started to gain momentum and mass as it went. And these new partners jumping in, a number of them have been just fantastic to work with.
Your quote, "It's not a question of if, but a question of when," I think is very motivating for anybody that cares about this issue. Anna, when we look at opportunities, can you kind of just, without giving our playbook away to anybody that may not want to hear it, when we tell our members or ask our members to act, it is something where we find an opportunity and then we're aware that there's a very limited time frame to possibly move something forward. Can you give us any sort of behind the scenes about how this works and how it leads to when a member may see something that is, please do this now, this is really important, and why it comes with such urgency?
Yeah, these things, opportunities come up at the last minute. Congress, while we have predictable pieces of legislation that move and that we know are moving every year, we never know when there could be this window of opportunity where something could be making its way to the floor, or leadership is trying to fill this floor time because something else shifted. And so our sponsors are at the ready for that, and they've told us we have to be. So it's their job to kind of figure out how they're going to get that vote, where they're going to make the push for an amendment or for the bill to be brought to the floor. And it's our job to say, okay, we will activate all of our membership. And that does come quite urgently, hence all of our, act now is the time, vote coming messages. But we're very mindful of everyone's time. This isn't people's day job, it's our day job. But we will, we want to be mindful of when we ask you to take action, and it is somewhat urgent. Marshall said at our Day on the Hill, I think it was 2 years ago now, but, I might give you 24, 48 hours notice. And when it comes down to an actual vote itself, that probably is what we'll have. We'll have a lead up like we saw this time where we're building support, but it might be we need you to act right now. And we appreciate when people do. It makes a difference.
And just for people that may not be familiar with the government relations process, this isn't something where you're reacting. This is all part of a strategic plan where you are proactively looking at opportunities and planting seeds, and then you're seeing how those seeds may take. And it's not something where you're not constantly working the issue. You're looking for angles. You're looking for opportunities, particularly in a divided Congress. How do you find these opportunities? Doug, is there any obvious opportunity coming up this year? I use the word obvious deliberately because we never know if there's also something coming up, but what might we expect over the coming weeks, months related to Credit Card Competition Act?
See, this is why, Jeff, you are such a good press person, because that is the question we will not and do not want to answer. We're not going to give away that playbook. And there are other reporters trying to get that out of us as well, but we need to stay mum there. What I will do, though, is give you and our members listening a little bit of insight as to how these things happen in the way you were just talking about. So on this stablecoin piece, we were talking about this late last year, and we were coordinating with the stablecoin groups and looking at this opportunity. We worked with our members and our board to adopt a new board policy early this year. We endorsed the stablecoin bill early this year. We put out articles on it. We built over a 7-month period this strategy in this case. And procedurally, it didn't work out, but that's the kind of thing we do and we have to do if we're going to have a chance to be successful in these things. And we will do that again. We just won't tell you what it's going to be because other people will listen to this podcast and they don't need to know that.
So fair enough. Basically what that means is stand by. We have really nice momentum on this. The message has resonated. The message won't change. We have a very, very committed industry and committed set of members that want to see this go through, and they're creating relationships that will help us. As Doug said, it's not if, it's when. So down the road, whenever that is, when NACS asks, can you do this? This would really help out. It may be the time because it will happen. Any final thoughts from either one of you about what might be next or what members might need to do to set up the when, not if scenario?
I would, if you have a loyalty app, I would really consider, if it's through Rovertown, you can work with them. If you've set up your own loyalty app, you can work with us. But we would love to help facilitate a way to activate your customers or employees. And, as you were talking, Jeff, one thing I was thinking is, more than anything, I would rather be us than them. We have the momentum on our side. They are on defense. They know that their system that they've created, this monopoly, isn't going to last forever. The dam is breaking. And we really saw that over the last 6 weeks.
Well, I know Anna especially would rather be us than them because the only thing the other side can do is lie about things. Oh, did I say that on the air? I'm sorry.
We'll fix that in post.
But no, we are in a good position. What we've told folks for a while on this is because we have those numbers, we have more people, we have more businesses. That's our advantage. The other side does have more money. That's never going to change. We have to play to our strengths. And our strength is we urge our folks not to let up, right? Each day, our folks can take 5 minutes and do something to move this issue forward. That can be sending an email to their member of Congress, it can be picking up the phone and calling, it can be trying to make a plan to come to one of our fly-ins, it can be just talking to one of their colleagues in their company or in another company in the industry and saying, hey, have you talked to your member of Congress about this? Or have you done one of these things? And of course, setting up the app, doing those things, those are fantastic. But even the little things, day by day, add up. That's where we've seen this support really grow, is just the consistent, doesn't have to be your entire day, doesn't have to be overwhelming, just that consistent attention to let's put some pressure on because this thing really matters. So
also for those that want to take action beyond the 5 minutes, beyond the keeping the momentum on, reach out to Anna or Doug directly if you have suggestions or opportunities that you want to discuss about how we can move this forward faster than slower, because I'm going to keep using this line, it will happen. So thank you both, Doug and Anna, for joining us today. And we look forward to how we can continue to find places to push the right thing forward and make it happen. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
And thank you all for listening to Convenience Matters.
Convenience Matters is brought to you by NACS and produced in partnership with Human Factor. For more information, visit convenience.org.